Okay, so today we're going to continue learning the new mimer. But first, the Kitzer, we've been learning about this idea, a very important idea, philosophical idea, practical idea. How do we deal with bad people prospering? How do we, derech rishoyim tzlocha, just to sum up the verse. The ways of the wicked are successful. And that's something that, Avi, could you mute yourself, please? You only mute yourself. That's something that, that in a way every religion and every spiritual movement grapples with or should grapple with. And Hasidus does as well. And Hasidus explains it that there's dual realities. There's dual realities. Now you see, to appreciate that short and brief answer, you need to have a perspective. And what's the perspective? That Hasidus teaches us that things don't begin here. Things begin on high, and things that happen here simultaneously begin on high. And you should know that that's a teaching of the Shalom HaKadosh, who's buried in Tveria, before the Baal Shem Tov. The Baal Shem Tov, the Shalom teaches that, Hasidus Chabad quotes it regularly, that the Maisa HaTachtonim, the acts below, are because there is a corresponding issue Bo'el Yonim. And more so, another Nakuda. I need you to pay attention to this because this is very important and foundational. The second Nakuda is that only because they are truisms in the spiritual realm do they become real in the physical world. Which means, Moshe, that if it's now raining here in Brooklyn, if in Shamayim, if in heaven, it's not raining now, it would not rain here. And the only reason, and now here comes a third Nakuda. The rain here, because it's created from Hashem, it retains its spirituality, its holiness. And truthfully, the rain here never loses its authenticity. You know who loses the authenticity? We do. When we look at the rain and we say, it's raining and it's because of the clouds. And the clouds are, and we give all of these gashmistic reasons, science, which can be true and is true many times. But when we confuse and say that the Gashmius is the trigger for what's happening, then we've lost the plot. So this is very, very important, and it's miyusad on a teaching of the Shalom HaKadosh. So it's from that perspective that we deal with what the Rashab is dealing with here in the Maimer at this point. And that is derech rishoyim tzlocha, parnasa. How do you balance the two, and how do you look at the two? Says the Rashab, in the name of Hasidus Chabad, that his ancestors have taught in many discourses, that there's dual reality. And this dual reality has an operative mode that you can either plug in to the way the operative mode is in the spiritual world, or you can plug into it the way it's in the physical world. And that's the difference between what he calls here Rav Chesed and Chesed. Chesed comes from Chochmah Satayra. Chochmah, the wisdom of Torah, says, do this, don't do this. If you do this and you don't do this, or you don't do this and you do this, these are the punishments, these are the consequences. That is what we call Seder Ishtalshalus, the order, the normal way of life. Okay? That's it. That's what Hashem wants. Hashem wants nature to have its law and order and its regulations. So Chesed says, give. Comes along Gvura and says, why should I give? Why should you give? He doesn't deserve it. And I'll tell you why not. And Chesed doesn't have a good answer and is not strong enough to overpower Gvura, and Gvura can overpower Chesed. And Gvura says, reminds me of what happened to this guy Michael Cohen. Here he is, Trump's lawyer. He's working for him. He's doing all the shenanigans, right, for Trump, right? And then Trump turns the table and puts him in jail and basically says he's lying, and he ends up in jail. Now he's out. But, when I thought about it, and I don't know if you're aware of what happened, it's such a chutzpah. It's such a chutzpah. The man who's doing your dirty work, you turn the table on him and you mess him up, and then he sits in jail. So, that's the way Gevura operates, my friend. Gevura is not our friend, okay? Gevura is discipline. And discipline will raise the flag and say, if you're not exactly what you're supposed to, you're not doing what you're supposed to be doing, you're going to have consequences, and I'm going to make sure you have consequences. That's Gevura. In order to change that, says the Rebbe, you need to tap into something called Rav Chesed, which I called before the dual reality. What's Rav Chesed? In English, the abundance of kindness. What does that mean? What's that word Rav? What does that add to the word Chesed? What does it imply? It implies that Chesed will be so powerful that it will overpower Gevura. And although Gevura brings all the challenges to the table, Hashem gives this Chesed such kayach, such power to overpower the Gevura. That comes from Rav Chesed. So earlier in the Maimer, the Rebbe said that Rav Chesed is an open book. I like that idea, says the Rebbe, but you should know that who also benefits the klipa, just like I told you, the mashal of the sun shining and the garbage is illuminated as well. So you can have a bright professor misleading young minds on campus in the name of knowledge, causing them to be big liberals, hate Eretz Yisrael, Achman Litzlan, be pro-PLO, and be, Jew haters at the end of the day. All coming from someone at Harvard or Columbia or Yale or Brooklyn College, or for that matter, maybe some of the Eretz Yisrael colleges. It makes no difference. It's up to the mind, the teacher. And of course, he has 75 titles after his name, so everyone bows to him. Oh, a PhD and MD and MD, my professor said he can't be wrong because he studied. Right? Well, this is what happens when Gevura has significance and dominance and is dominant. So we need Rav Chesed. So 1 second. So and Gevura can get that from Rav Chesed, because Rav Chesed says it's an open book. Says the Rashab in yesterday's Shir, but at the same time, Rav Chesed has this aspect of overpowering. So if you plug in right, the overpowering element, sometimes the language Hillel and Chassidus is Tagbores Hachayut, Tagbores Hachayis, Tagbores in the Lashon Gevura.
Like Gevura, okay, yeah.
Yeah, but Tagbores, the overpowering of the energy. That the energy that's chesed, that's kind and good, will overpower the negative. This is what we learned yesterday in different words. I believe today I chose different words to explain the concept. But it's such an important concept to know that what we experience they're dual realities. So in a way, what you see is not what you get. Right? Because what you see is the situation now, on hand. But what you get is really, if you're focused and you know the dual reality, it's a whole different experience. It's a godly experience, a spiritual experience. And you search there for an answer. And by the way, this is a Gemara. It's also a Gemara. The Gemara says, Chosh beroishoi, I think it's Gemara Brachos of Shabbos. Chosh beroishoi, if you have a headache, what should you do? Take Tylenol, aspirin, homeopathy medicine? What should you do? Go for a jog? Tell your wife to leave you alone? What should you do? Says the Gemara, Chosh beroishoi, Yasik b'toiro. Learn Torah. Now here's a question. I have a headache. I can't learn. I can't concentrate. And the Gemara says, Yasik b'Torah. So, as we say in good old Talmudic yeshiva world, what was asked was not answered. What was answered was not answering the question. It's like, or the Lashon of Rashi, Ma inya shmitos eitz lahar Sinai, in the beginning of Parshas Bahar. What does Shemitah have to do with Har Sinai? Like, what do you know? What's the answer? Al pi Chassidus, it makes a lot of sense. Chosh beroishoi. You have a headache from what's happening here on earth. Yasei b'Torah. Put your mind into the heaven, into Torah, and see it from a different perspective, and your headache will go away. So what's causing us the headache? Something that bothers us. Whether it's physical health or, emotional situations. Parnasa, anxieties, issues that we constantly speak about. Chosh beroishoi. The last few days I've been working around the clock to produce some work, some books and all that, and I've been sitting almost all day. After the shir, I just sit from like 8, 9 o'clock in the morning till 5 at the computer. I started to get a headache, in the last few days, and it never happens to me. So I said, probably it's because I'm sitting maybe so close to the screen. I don't know. That's what they say. I don't know. But the truth is, that headache is not coming from the screen. The screen is only an instrument. There's something else happening. Now go find it. But even to look at life this way takes a sensitivity. And that's what Chassidus and the Baal Shem Tov gives us. The sensitivity to look at situations from a dual reality perspective. Let's learn now inside 143, the Kitzur. Tnuas Hatikla, remember he brought a very nice Zohar which spoke about the spinning of a wheel. Avi, when you have a chance, you should read up what you missed the last few days. The Zohar that he quoted, I believe in yesterday's shir, was about a wheel spinning. And it can spin to the right or it can spin to the left. So the Rebbe said, Tnuas Hatikla. Tnuat means like movement, like, traffic, right? In the Hebrew, there's Tnuah.
You say it in modern Hebrew, Tnuah is like movement, like traffic movement.
Right, okay, so Tnuas Hatikla, the movement of the wheel. Tikla is an Aramaic word, it means wheel. The Yamin, when you move it to the right, Bahashpa Chesed, you get Hashpa from Chesed. Ulismail, when you move the wheel to the left, Bahashpa Gvura, you get Gvura, Hu Becheshben Meduyak. It's a precise accounting. It's not just your whim that decides left, right, left, up, down, bottom, like do whatever you want. No. It has a cheshbon meduyak, says the Rashab. Aleph, lefi kiyum haTorah mitzvahs. What's the cheshbon meduyak? When does the wheel move to the right and when does it move to the left, Moshe? Depending on your observance of mitzvahs and study of Torah. Beis, be'oifan iskalus the chesed v'gvura. The inclusiveness of chesed and gvura, how much chesed you have and how much gvura you have in your life, that's the way you tilt the wheel. You hear that? B'hacheshbon b'kiyum haTorah mitzvahs v'hafchoi and the accounting in regard to the fulfillment of Torah mitzvahs and the opposite when you don't do it. It's based on everyone's neshama. No two people are alike. There's no two people that the wheel moves for them alike. Because we sometimes think, well, we're all basically the same, a little more, a little wrong. Every person, the difference in people is in the details. The difference of mankind is not in the generalities, it's the details. You know, the detail of a mitzvah, the detail of an activity. Okay? Derech L'Shoyim Tzelacha, he quotes the...
Question about this?
What?
Question? I don't know if he's heading this way, the Rebbe, but you can maybe...
Yeah.
You can let me know. If he's talking about the difference that is the details, so can this be like also when it comes to, let's say in Yiddishkeit, right? So we know about the 12 Shvatim, and each Shevet had its own tafkid, and each Shevet looked different, and everybody had their own thing. And unfortunately today, you know, we're very much, you know, either you're black or you're white. There's, you know, everything's black and white. So do you think he's heading here? Is that where he's going? That each person has its own specific tafkid?
Well, maybe later, Yoni. I don't know. We have a lot more to cover, so I don't know.
Okay.
But we'll keep it in mind. He definitely says this in the Kitzur, but he doesn't elaborate on it. So let's see, maybe, but it's good that you're bringing it up. Let's continue. Derech L'Shoyim Tzelacha, the ways of the wicked are successful, quoting the verse, because they receive at that time from transcendence, Hillel. And everyone can get in. Now let's go to the next Maimer test, page 145, Perek Aleph. You can see it's a long chapter, so let's go. We'll get through it. Hashem will help us. The source for this idea that we're discussing, when we talk, Moshe, about the order and progression of Hashem's energy as it applies to the world, it's experienced in two ways. One's called Oyer Pnimi, an inner way. I'm sorry. Here he says, no. Here he's talking about the one way of Seder Ishtalshelis. He says, Seder Ishtalshelis, by its inherent conditions and ingredients, is experienced through an inner light, which means V'hainu. Hislapshus Eiris B'Kelim Dafka. The energy invests itself specifically in a vessel. And if it doesn't have a vessel, a receptacle, the energy is wasted. Where is the first place where we find the concept of kelim, of vessels? Says the Kabbalah, it's in Chochmah, in wisdom. Well, he gives us a mashal. The power of Chochmah in man is the first power, Yoni, that invests itself in the receptacle, in the vessels, which we call the limbs of the body. Why is Chochmah the first, Avi? Because the Harotzen Shelamayla Chochmah, when you talk about the willpower that's above Chochmah, Ein Lo Kelim Miyuchedes Beivori Aguf. It doesn't have one specific domain in the body. Who nimtza b'chol aguf b'shova. Will is equal throughout the body. If your hand wants to move, it moves. The foot wants to move, it. In other words, the Rotzain, can we say Rotzain will has one specific Keli? No. Rotzain is realized in the brain once you desire to move. Let's continue. Now look at that word, Moshe. Nirgash. Although Ratzon is more nirgash, felt, realized in the brain, within the head, That's his rhetorical question, which I just answered before. But let's see what the Rashab says. Hainu. The brain in the head realizes and feels more the will than the foot, the leg. Says the Rebbe. That's the end of his rhetorical remark, question. Now comes his retort, his response to the rhetorical remark. Avo. However, so he's making a very refined difference here between the will itself and the realization and feeling of the will. Chassidus, this is Chassidus. We're so lucky to taste Chassidus. Now use your head over Shabbos to see if you understand this in your words, not in my words, not in the Rashab's words. The difference between pure will being equal in the foot and the head versus the hergish of will, which is more present in the brain than in the foot. And I'm not going to say any more, but that's what he says. I want you guys maybe to come up with a mushal or two, something to explain that to yourselves that you're comfortable with, and then share it with me on Sunday, Mitzvah Hashem. I want to go further now. And the proof that Rashab says, I got to prove it to you. I can make statements, but what's my proof? The Tzemach Tzedek brings this. You only wanted to learn that from the Tzemach Tzedek. This is from the Tzemach Tzedek's Derech Mitzvah Secha, Mitzvah Tzitzis. He brings this that we're about to learn. And what is that? That as soon as your foot desires to move, Linaneya, Humenaneya taketh umeyad bilum shum bilishum shiyas man klau. It moves instantaneously, immediately, without any lapse of time. If Ratzon, so this is his argument, Avi, if Ratzon was not in the foot, but its keli, its place was the head, it would take time for it to go from the head to the foot. And the fact that it's immediate, it takes no time, there's no shias zman klau. Therefore, the Rashab says, this proves that it is in the foot. V'im naima, and he talks it out, what I just said. V'im naima sha'arotze mishkonei b'moyach shebarosh. If we were to believe that the place of will is in the brain of the head, k'maya seichel shebishkonei b'rosh. Just as seichel, just as intelligence, where is its seat? In the brain, we would argue. So too, the place of will is in the brain. That's its house, its home. Then it would require time for it to come from the brain to impact the foot. And the Rebbe says, why do I say that would have to be? Because let's compare it to intelligence, which the seat of intelligence is the brain. Let's see how the brain impacts other things. Does it take time or not? Look what the Rebbe says. Take, for example, when seichel, that's in the brain, impacts the foot. Imun raglav behiluch yosher. The craftsmanship of walking a straight line, let's say a tight rope. If you don't walk a tight rope, a straight line, bye-bye, Charlie. Dancing at a wedding, coming in and making beautiful dances, being a sameach chasam v'kala. Everyone's dancing. Nah, this guy is a dancer. He knows how to move those feet in a way that's elegant, rich, gewaldic, and sneas at the same time. Not like a bohemian at many weddings today, which is one of the great travesties of our Jewish world, where weddings have become a place of letting out your nefesh habamis dancing like goyim many times, etc., etc. I don't want to go into it, but you guys all know what I mean. You can dance and dance with tremendous koyach and sweat and dance and be happy, but dance like a yid. So this guy, the Rebbe says here, another example is rikud, al pi kavonas haseichel. In other words, the movement of your dancing is guided by seichel. The left tap first, the right back second. Like they train the kids here. My daughter's growing up and having plays in the girls' schools. You know, they make plays. I'm sure they do the same thing with your daughters in schools, right? They spend time training themselves to perform the act, and they did dances with songs. So seichel is guiding the dancing. You see, based on the movement of the song. Da 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 da. One way. Da 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 da. Another way. Da 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 da. A third way. So each one is another movement. Who's guiding that? Who is saying?
Kids.
What?
It's kids. It's at the kids. Kids from through.
Yeah. Okay. Exactly. So if seichel doesn't tell you to go ooh or ooh ooh or ooh. You ain't blowing that way, you're just blowing ooh, one ooh, and that's it. Seichel's guiding the rikud, the negina, etc. Says the Rebbe Tzorach sheyizman v'imun v'layova b'derech memela. It takes time, and it's not coming automatic. It ain't happening. If anyone thinks that an expert just goes into a room and does what he does without any mental preparation, totally wrong. The greatest genius and the greatest teacher and the greatest performer prepares. No question about it. What is preparation? The way the mind, the seichel, dictates how the activity should be. And that takes time. And that takes effort. And that takes prep. So what do we see? That seichel, which is lodged and housed in the brain, its impact on the result takes time, takes training. So the fact that Ratzon, it's not the fact that Ratzon, it's not that way, is proof that it's not like seichel. And why not? Because seichel is housed in a keli, in a specific place. There isn't seichel in your nose. I'm sorry. It's not. There's seichel in the brain. But there is...
I would argue with that.
But there is... Ratzon.
I mean, there are people who have sensory discrimination in the smell that is infathomable to the rest of us. That's seichel in the nose.
No, that's not seichel. That's not seichel, Hillel. That's intuition. That's hergish. That's super conscious. Okay. This is Hasidic.
I wouldn't say it's a trainable, it's a learnable skill. It's a learnable developmental skill, like just like you would like for example, for me, one of the things I work on in exercises, the individual movement of each toe. So I can move some toes individually. I can't move others, but I've seen it done. That you can learn to move every toe. It's all learnable and similar.
Okay, so you're admitting you can learn.
That's seichel b'regel, but you could learn that same thing to be able to discriminate between smells.
Fine, of course,
and so on.
Of course. That's not what I meant. But of course you can learn it. But that means that seichel is training the nose. Yes, that's
okay. That's what I mean.
That's it.
There's seichel in your nose. It's like using your foot once you put it there.
No, but Hillel, the seichel is in the brain, and the brain is training the nose.
I'm not arguing with that.
Yeah, that's what. That's what he's saying. Let's continue inside. וזהו לפי שבו בדרך השתלשלות בהסלבשות בדרך חיים פנימי. Why, Moshe, is there this difference between Seichel and Ratzon? It's because once we talk about Or Pnimi, it has its place and its rules and regulations. It's part of Histalshelus. You can't get away from it. In the brain, Seichel invests itself in actuality. Right? ששם משכן השכל ומשתלשל מכוח לכוח כמו מן השכל אל המידות, because over there in the place where seichel rests there is the hishtalshelus. It goes from koyach to koyach. For example, it goes from the seichel to the midos until it ends up in the movement of the foot. So the process by which it goes from the brain to the foot, it invests itself. In other words, seichel is in the foot, Hillel, not in a superficial way. It's when seichel impacts the foot, and if it's really, like you said, with the nose, the discernment of smells, and you know exactly what's going on, then it's not a habitual experience. It can be, but it's the real seichel is it's a guided understanding experience as it is through the nose. Every smell, as perceived by the nose when it was impacted by the seichel, training it to pay attention to the different smells, each one is different than the other one. That's what we call pneumius. You can't lump them all together. That's why you need hishtadlut. You need to invest and to spend time, to put effort, diligence. His askut, which means involvement, right? V'shiyazman, and it takes time. And he goes, so now he concludes his argument, his position. And if we were to say that the willpower has one specific vessel, so then it should take time until the foot is able to do what the will wants to do. Now I think that, what probably you're having a little issue with, and I had too, when I began learning Chassidus, and for years, is the idea of understanding the difference that I said it before between seichel being lodged specifically in the brain, shebarosh, and ratzon being not lodged there but rather all over, equal. That's an important nekuda to know well and to understand it, for this to flow, for this to make sense. But the Rashab is assuming we understand that, okay? And that's why he says, for Ratzon to impact the feet, it needs to have time. Let me just finish this paragraph. He repeats himself. The will impacts the movement of the feet, of the foot, immediately without any lapse of time, without any involvement. Those are the words I said before, Avi. If the Ratzain does not have any one specific vessel beguf, and it finds itself in the foot as in the head. And the first koyach that invests itself in a specific vessel, that's chokhmah. Because chokhmah invests itself in the brain, b'moach. U'Shalas Moichet Inu. And the Zohar teaches that we have three, that Moyach has three compartments. Shen Kalim Legimel Koiches, which each is a home, a vessel for the three particular intellectual components of Chochmah, Bina, and Das. So here is another important point, Yoini. The Koyach of Bina is not lodged in the same apartment as the Koyach HaChochmah, and the Koyach of Das is not lodged in the same place. They're all intellectual, so they're all overall in the brain, Shebarosh, that's its home, but each one has a separate room. And this is what happened, and this is why many times someone who is excellent in creativity, which is Chochmah, but all of a sudden mixes Bina into Chochmah, and Bina, which is analysis, is not his expertise, we have confusion. We have an idea that's gone wrong, and vice versa. You have someone who's very strong in Bina, in analysis, but if he doesn't allow and know that he is not creative, and doesn't like the creative type to impact his Bina, it also is lacking. And the story that I told you, it's a story when I made that Cafe Schmooze on Beverly Boulevard in Los Angeles, and my friend Mark Oliver Sholem and I, we put it together, and Mark had these beautiful pink couches in the 3rd Street Beverly Hills area, beautiful area, and he said, Rabbi, I'll donate them to the new disguised Chabad house called Cafe Schmooze. And one day I come in and we have pink couches. Chaim Dolphin from Brooklyn, New York, and Crown Heights has pink couches for a Chabad house. Leather couches. Wow, very interesting. Okay. And the next things that I ordered was a bar, stools, because we made a cafe, and bookshelves, and books, and we had a certain color, a pretty regular, traditional color, and no one's coming through the doors. So one of my friends says, I go to a younger guy and I say, a college student, how do we change the situation? He says, I'll talk to my friends. He gets a few guys and girls together who were from or frumish, and they knew the scene of LA, and they said, Rabbi, we're willing to help you, but you have to allow us to choose colors and turn this place inside out. I had no choice. I really didn't want to do it because it's not me, but it's not me, meaning I'm not strong in chokhmah, in that area, in creativity. And they had the creative touch. And they painted the walls, I think, dark green and banana yellow, and took out lights and turned the place into what looked like a nightclub. And, this is the farthest thing from my vision of a Chabad house, a shul, or even a cafe. You go into a normal cafe here, it's ugly, but that's what it is. Anyway, I said, go for it, because the people weren't coming in. As soon as they changed the colors, the place started to hop and pop, and 6,000 people walked through those doors in 1 year. Unit people, so they were repetitive customers. 6,000 people. And Rabbi Kuntres...
How many walked out?
How many walked out? You don't walk out when Bob Dylan's son-in-law Peter Himmelman is performing. No one's walking out. You couldn't get through the doors, okay? And Rabbi Kuntres' son, Mendy Kunin, calls me. Chaim, he says, I hear you're rocking the house. And here I have this beautiful big building on Gailey Avenue in Westwood with UCLA right there. And I get so little students. What are you doing? Tell me the secret. So anyway, I think of this as a mashal of Chochmah and Bina. You could be strong in Chochmah and weak in Bina. Strong in Bina and weak in Chokhmah. And if you mix the two, you got a balagan. And that's what happens. That's the reason why we have issues. Because we have three components to the mind. Chokhmah, Bina, Das. And Das is a whole other discussion. Focus and concentration, which Hillel, that's part of his work. Meditation and thought and using it to cure yourself. Okay? And it's so important to know what we're strong in and let the other person who's strong in the other area become your partner. And then you'll have the best of both worlds. Let me just finish the line. So we have Chokhmah, Bina, Das in the three compartments. We're on top of 147. They are in the components of the mind. The midos, their home, their dwelling place is the heart. All other powers that one has, kochos, have their separate vessels and limbs that they resonate, that they resonate there, that they are there. Okay, Chevra, this was a great, yes? Hillel.
I just want to make a comment that I saw similar Torah in the Nesiva Shalom today on the pasuk Vayelech Shneim Yachdav. That it says that three times in the pasuk in the psukim, and the Nesiva Shalom explains that the first time Avram has a recognition that in order to get to accomplish this nisayon, he needs the midah of Yitzchak. And then when Vayelech Shneim Yachdav, so that was a shituf of the chesed of Abraham with the gevur of Yitzchak. And the second time, when Yitzchak asked Ayaseh Lola, and Abraham says, "Elokim yireh et haseh," God will show us the seh. Yitzchak realizes he needs the midah of Abraham.
That's great. Thank you, Yasher Koyach. That's a wonderful taich, and it's apropos of the parsha. So everyone should have a gewaldige parsha, a gewaldige Shabbos with much simcha and freilichkeit, and a Shabbos mevorachim Kislev. Kislev is the month of light, Chanukah, Yutes Kislev. Shnei Or, the Alter Rebbe's name is Shnei Or, two lights, Nigla and Chassidus, Tanya, the Shulchan Aruch, and lights. Everyone should be blessed. It all starts from the Shabbos Mevorachim. Say Tehillim as much as... What? Yeah. Say Tehillim in English, in Hebrew, whatever. Say Tehillim, Fabring, say L'chaim. Maybe should help. We should have Geula immediately. Zay gesund, Chevra. See you Sunday.
Bye-bye.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Good.